To start out with some introductions real quick. I'm Bruce Austin, and I have my hands in a little bit of everything that has to do with WARNS, from the day-to-day activities to research and grant work. Tao Vo is a graduate student here in our educational psychology program, and Tao has first author journal publication bragging rights on research around WARNS. So Tao, and she's also the voice of our trainings and our training videos. Also with us is Brian French, Dr. Brian French, who has been involved with WARNS for probably about 10 years now, right? And he was involved with some of the original research, trying to provide evidence for the validity of the assessment. So we'll get started now.
Bruce, before we start, I'd just like some housekeeping comments. If anyone has questions throughout the session, please feel free to enter them into the chat, and then we'll do our best to answer those questions at the end of the session. So go ahead and share your questions in the chat, and we'll monitor those.
And that's right. And at the end of the presentation, we will also unmute you so that you can voice any questions that you might still have. All right, so what this training covers is it's just intended to be an orientation of the new online software system. This is not like a full training that we give to new districts. So if you're new to WARNS, you're brand new to WARNS, this orientation is still going to be helpful. It covers, we're just going to take you through the entire software system. But if you're new, you still need to come up to speed on what the WARNS is, what it measures, how the reports are used, and those are the things that we are not covering today. So we're not defining what the 6 domains are that the WARNS measures, the assessment protocol. All of this information should be available to you through your organization's primary user. So one of our efforts to keep your costs down, your subscription cost for WARNS, is that we give the primary user in your district or organization the ability to train everyone, define user IDs, and all of that stuff. You can also get information, full training information, at our information website, warns.wsu.edu. We are updating our training videos out there. We're updating them from the old system to the new system. So they're not fully ready yet. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, they'll be ready. If you're experiencing staffing changes, for example, if your primary user is no longer in that position, and you're all feeling a bit weak in your organization on WARNS, then just send us an email and we can schedule a new training for you and your new primary user. And you can contact us at our email address, warns@wsu.edu. And we ask you here to whitelist this email address in whatever email software you're using, because when we activate all your accounts on the new system, you're going to get an activation email from our new system. And you'll see an example of that a little later on here. So in order to help prevent that activation email from going to your spam folders, please whitelist this address. So I am going to get out of my PowerPoint here and go over to the software system. So this is the information website. And so one of the issues with the old system, the old WARNS system, was that we had essentially 4 links to do everything. You needed a different link for each of the 2 assessments, the high school and the middle school. You had a different link for the PISO user and data management system. And then, of course, there's this link, our information website at warns.wsu.edu. So this is the only link that you need from here on out. And once you get to this page, you can click on this button at the very top here, the new WARNS login page. We also have a login over in the menu here. If you can see where my mouse is indicating. So either of these two places will get you to the new software platform. If you want to go back to the old system to download data, that sort of thing, you can click on the legacy WARNS button right here. So I'm just going to click on the new WARNS login page. I'm going to click out over here. Let's see. And I was already logged in, so it's taken me in. So anyway, this is the login page that you get to when you click on this login page button. And this is my user ID that I have set up for a test school district that we have in the system. I'm just going to log in and take you there. And this is the typical dashboard that a primary user is going to see. It has different tiles for different functions, and all of these functions, or most of these functions, were available on the old system. But what we've tried to do here is to just organize things in a bit more user-friendly manner, a more modern look and feel. And plus, we have also instituted some new features. One of the new features is this assessment links feature, which I'll get to a little later. That's completely brand new for this system. So this will be your landing page, and depending on what permissions you have, you'll see all or some of these tiles. So for example, if you don't have permission to do assessment links, whatever that is, you won't see that tile. And that decision depends upon your organization's primary user. So the first thing we're going to demonstrate here is doing an assessment. And that's probably the most common use across all of our users, is doing an assessment. And if you click on this little drop-down arrow, you'll see that we have 5 different versions. And that's one more than the old system had. And part of the feedback from our session on Tuesday, it turns out that even if folks are experienced with the WARNS system, they may not necessarily be familiar with all of the versions that we have available. So one of the things that we're going to add to this page or to the system is a table that defines what those different versions are. So this table will appear either on that landing page or in another section to help guide people as to which version might be best for them. So generally for each, for the high school and the middle school, we have a full and needs and a confidential version, and you can see which of these versions has different features. They all produce scores, they all produce demographics. Some of them have different ways of displaying the questions on the WARNS report, and as well as whether or not questions are provided for a student's broader background. For those of you familiar with the full version asks about 20 additional questions across about the student's history with things like the juvenile justice system and that sort of thing. Again, if you want more detail on these different versions and how to use them, we will point you to your primary user or to the WARNS documentation that's out on our website. So I'm going to demonstrate the process for doing an assessment, and it's basically the same assessment protocol as the old system. So a counselor is going to be the individual to log into this landing page, and they're going to start the assessment just as they would have with the old system. And they're going to get a similar set of administrative pages that appear at the beginning. So I'm going to select my school, Crimson High School in this test district, and I'm going to enter an ID here. And we have the same questions about special ed and 504 plan, this sort of thing. But we've added another drop down here to make it easier for you to record the reason for doing the assessment. And all of this data, again, just as with the old system, all of the data that you're entering here, as well as your student assessment data, is all going to remain downloadable for you in a raw format, an Excel format. And so you'll have everything that's reported on these administrative pages, as well as the questions that the student responds to. So I'm going to start the assessment. And this is the point, just as with the old system. This is the point where the administrator, the counselor, turns the computer over to the student and lets them begin responding to questions. And so I'm just going to take us through real quick here. And this, just like the old system, I've done the demographics. And this is the first set of WARNS items. And one of the things that we provide automatically now, you don't even have to select whether you want the Spanish translation available anymore. But that Spanish translation is going to be available to all students. And they can just on their own decide if they want to do the Spanish version or the English version. And of course, one of the questions that we get is, what other languages are we working on? And we've gotten lots of requests for a lot of different languages. But doing a translation, providing a translation, there's a lot more involved with providing a translation than just simply having someone translate the questions. I'll let Brian add a little bit more about that here, if he would.
Sure, Bruce, thanks. Yeah, so we're looking at different languages that we could translate to, sort of trying to figure out which ones are most popular or most used in schools. The complication gets in doing correct translation. It's really more about adaptation of the items to not just the language, but to the culture that's associated with that language. And that can usually take a bit of a process to go through to make sure you're following the guidelines in our field of practice, so we feel confident that the adaptation and translation are appropriate, plus some research behind those translation adaptations to show that they actually have the same meaning as their English counterparts. So we'll be working on that slowly over time, but it is a bit more complicated than just simply putting the item into something like Google Translate and say, look, we're done. We want some evidence to show that we really adapted those items to have the right meaning for the students. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Brian. And yes, and even just with the Spanish translation, we had school counselors who were native Spanish speakers reviewing our translation as part of the process, and there was disagreement between them as to some of the wording of these questions. And so when we get requests for Russian or Burmese and this sort of thing, we've got to be very careful about how we translate and adapt those. So this page should look familiar to those of you who have done assessments with students. This is the point where the student turns the computer back over to you, the administrator, or they can review their answers if they want to go back and perhaps change responses, just like with the old system. So I'm going to click submit. And now it's going to require me, just like with the old system, to log back in. And this is a security step so that we avoid the student being able to get into the platform and seeing the responses from other students. So I'm going to log back in. And when I get to that landing page, I have something new that appears here, this orangey box that says confirm assessments. That's telling me that I've had a student complete an assessment, and then I need to go in there and finish the process, just like with the old platform, and view the report. So I'm going to click that orange button, and that's going to take me to the list of all of my assessments needing to be confirmed. And here's my student ID, all 9s here, the version that I chose, the high school, and I'm going to click confirm. Now I can, just like with the old protocol, I can verify the student's demographic information, again, the 504 plan, special ed, that sort of thing. And then I have another drop-down box here. This is new, that allows you a drop-down response regarding how seriously you believe the student took the assessment process. Just like with the old system, there's a comment box, and then the reason for the assessment is displayed once again here at the end. So I click confirm, and this page gives me the option to either go back to the dashboard if I want to assess another student or look at data, or I can view the report for that student that just completed. Again, this is very similar to the old system. I get a window that opens up with a downloadable PDF file of the WARNS report. On this first page, I'm showing the 6 domain scores, and just as before, I can scroll down and look at the responses that the student provided for all of the WARNS items, as well as any optional questions. Also, just like with the old system, I selected the Spanish translation, and because I did that, even just for one set of questions, it is going to provide a Spanish version of that same report. I don't know if everyone, even who uses the old system, is aware that it would do this as well, but this is a nice feature. So now I can go back to the platform and the dashboard again, and go to what is probably the second most used set of options here, and that's looking at the student data. If I want to just look at a summary for my school or my district, I can click on summary, and that shows me just all of the assessments that have completed. This demonstration user is at the district level for this test district, and so I'm seeing everything that's been done, all of our test cases across this district, how they break down according to our 6 domains. I can also I also have this filtering feature here that I could look at these results by certain dates. Now, one of the features that I haven't pointed out yet is just like these panels, these tiles here on the landing page, on every other page that we go to in the system, we're going to have the same features available to us in this drop-down system up here. So I can start an assessment from any page. I can manage my administrators for my school or my district if I have permissions here. There's a new feature here, my account, where I can go in and change features, aspects of my own account. And so I'm going to continue with the student data set of drop-down options. I'm going to go to view student data, and this is going to give me a little more user-friendly display of all of my student data at whatever level I have permission to view. And so in this case, I'm a district level user. I can see everything that has been completed for this test district. And this is a little bit more user-friendly, or I would say quite a bit more user-friendly than the old system where you had lists of IDs and you could look at cases kind of one at a time. Here I can filter by an exact ID. So if I can count the number of 9s that I have here. Filter by an ID. There's the report that I just did, and I can look at that report. Just as with the old system, I can click on the report button and see the same report that we were just viewing. So now I am going to actually let me point out the headers here in this display. And I'm going to clear my filter so I can look at all of my data once again. So each of these columns, or all of them except for the student ID, have these little up and down arrows. This is a new sorting feature that we've made available. Also for the domain columns, these are the 6 domains that WARNS measures here. They are heavily abbreviated, but if you hover your mouse over those titles, you can see the full domain name. So for example, right here, I can see that sub means substance abuse. So I can sort my cases by any of these, including the total score. So if I wanted to click on aggression defiance, the aggression defiance arrow, there's everybody in my district listed from high to low aggression defiance. And again, I've got a filtering feature by date. I could filter date ranges, and I can also filter by school. So here's everybody sorted by aggression defiance for Crimson High School. And again, I can clear my filter. We still have the data download feature. And this feature, I think, works quite a bit faster, and we're hoping will be a little more stable than the feature with our old system. Again, you can filter by dates or just download everything. If you want to go to the old system, and that system will be available until December 31st of this year, you can just click right here to download your old district or school's data. Looking at the My Account button, you want to manage your account. We now have the ability to change both your email address as well as your password. And this is a completely new feature for this system. Anytime you want to head back to that main landing page, you can go up to this banner up here and click on that, and it will take you back to this landing page with the original tiles. There's actually one other feature I wanted to show you with the student data view. If you recall with the old system, if you had access to both the middle school and high school, in order to look at the different student reports for each of those systems, you had to go up to a little drop down that was up in our banner and select whether you were looking at high school or middle school reports. Here, all of the reports are displayed on the same page. So you can see that I've got high school reports here. I've got someone from our middle school, our test middle school. So if you have district level permissions, you'll see all assessment types and all schools listed on one single page. You don't have to toggle back and forth. Managing admins is similar to the old system, but we have some really nice new features. And one of those new features is if I click on edit, so this is similar to the old system where you could edit an individual's permissions. So I'm going to edit the new TAO user ID here. It's now much more easier. It's much easier for you to change your affiliation. If I wanted to change this user to a different school, I can just go to this drop down menu and just say, all right, I want them to be restricted to, say, Crimson High School. And I want to take away their user management permission. I can save these changes. And now this user is associated with Crimson High School instead of being a district-wide user. This is a nice feature that's available to your primary user and whoever has user management permissions. On the old system, you would actually have to delete the user completely and then redefine them and send them that activation email and have them go through all of that, changing the password and everything. Here, it's just a simple drop-down menu change, which is really, really nice and convenient. So if I want to add a new administrator, just like with the old system, I've got the same permissions. I can define where I want that individual to be affiliated, either at the district level or at a specific school. And I can give them different permissions here. Enter their email address. And I'm going to enter a slightly different email address here. And I'm going to add this administrator. And I can scroll down and find Bruce test user right here at the bottom. And also new to this system is we've got an activated column. And you can see that some of these users have yes in this column, others have no. When you add a user, a new user, it's going to have a no here. That's because this user has not yet responded to their activation email and set their password. What do those activation emails look like? I'm going to go back over here to my PowerPoint to show you what that looks like. All right. So this is an example. This is my personal Gmail account, and I created a test user. And this is what the email looks like that you will get when your account is activated. It's a little bit nicer and more modern looking than the old emails. Depending on how your systems are set up, you might actually have to click on something to download the pictures so that you see the account setup button. But it's just a matter of clicking that account setup, and it will take you to the WARNS site where you can set your permanent password and log into the system for the first time. Let's go back to that main landing page, and I think the only thing I have left to demonstrate for you is the assessment links. And this is brand new to the system. And this feature came about because we had some districts that need to assess some large groups of students sometimes as much as 60 students at a time. And it became unmanageable for them to be able to meet with students individually, one-on-one, to start the process and go through everything and to generate the report. And so they would get students together based on, for example, based on the number of unexcused absences. And they would go through kind of a cumbersome process on the old system, directing them through those initial administrative pages, having them start the assessment, and then directing them again through those final administrative pages at the end. And students could select the wrong options and cause all kinds of difficulties. not necessarily intentionally, but just from clicking on the wrong thing as they're going through this. This assessment links option streamlines that whole process. It makes it really easy to assess a group of students. So I've taken you to this page in this test district that we have, and you can see that we have one assessment link already defined here. And an option, a button to create new links. You can create as many links as you want. And what you will have to do, what you're restricted to is each link has to be restricted to an individual school and an assessment version. Other than that, you can have any number of combinations of assessment versions and schools that you need to do. We also recommend that you follow a naming convention that makes your links recognizable. And so here we've got this column that says link ending, and it says CHS needs. So one of the schools in this test district is called Crimson High School. And so what this link ending tells me, if this is the first time I've come to this page, for example, this link ending tells me that this is a link for assessing students at Crimson High School who need to be given the needs version of the assessment. And what I can do is I can just click this copy link button, and I get a little drop down that says it's been copied to my clipboard. And then I can paste that link into an email or put it on a website for students to access, for groups of students to access to complete the assessment. I can also go to the view edit option here to see exactly how the assessment, that assessment link is defined. I also get displayed for me the full link. This is what the full link for this particular assessment version is going to look like. And I can even copy it right here. I can copy this link address by right-clicking on it. And so now, if I go to a new window, I can paste that assessment link into my address bar. And there you see that it is that gowarns.wsu.edu with that ending that we were looking at on the previous page, that CHS-needs. So again, this is a link that could be put on a school's web page when you bring students into a room to assess a group. You just have them go to that web page, click on that link, and when they do that, this is the first page that they will see. They'll be asked to enter their student ID. And when they do that, they get taken to the first question of the assessment. And the assessment questions will be all that they are asked. They will not have to deal with any of these administrative questions at either the beginning of the process or the end of the process. In order to define one of these links, I can go to that assessment links tile again. I can create a link. Say, for example, I want to create a link for my middle school. Here I've got the Butch the Cougar Middle School. I want my link to be, say, middle confidential. I want to give them the confidential version and click add link. And that link has been added to my list of links. Now, one of the things that I did not do was I did not select this checkbox here, which would make it a permanent link. So if you want to add a link to like a web page for your school, for example, that you're always going to be using every couple of months, for example, then you would want to check the permanent box. Otherwise, this link would disappear after 8 hours. So we caution you to be careful using this. If you create permanent links, anyone could get in there who discovers that link and do an assessment based on any student ID that they enter. So be mindful of that. Try to keep the links secure. The other thing that we want to emphasize is that this is not a substitute for that one-on-one discussion process. And we ask you to be mindful of the intended use of the WARNS, and that is as an information synthesis tool, a conversation starter. And so when you assess students using these links, please keep in mind that the intended use asks you to sit down with each of these students after they've been assessed with their report and discuss where they're most at risk and get to talking with them to understand what their issues are. Some schools use this system to kind of triage their students. They'll get their WARNS reports together, and they'll talk first to the students who are most at risk, and then follow up with the others later. So that about covers everything. I'm going to ask Tao if we have any questions in the chat so far.
Don't need to take those.
Yeah,
Sure.
Brian, you can take them.
Yeah, so Bruce, we had a few questions. One, could you go back to the login page also, Bruce? I'll just reference the login page with some information there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go there. Yeah, perfect.
All right, I have to log out of this.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, so I'll reference that in one of my comments. So one of the questions that we had was about I'm going to scroll back up to Joyce's question. Requirements for parents to permission slips for the WARNS testing. So that's a great question, Joyce. Thanks for asking that. One of the in history, this consent form used to be required for administering the WARNS by us, and that's really when it was being developed and the research was going on 5 to 8 years ago. Since then, with the service that WARNS is providing to schools, WSU and we do not require consent forms for WARNS to be administered on our end. What we would suggest is you follow best practice in your school district or your school with the requirements for giving any kind of psychoeducational assessment to a child that you're working with. So again, we don't require that. We have some samples you can use, but it really is up to you on your end if that's a requirement you need to have in informing the parents and the students in terms of consent. So hopefully that makes that clear. If you have questions, feel free to, Bruce, you can unmute them. I think you can put in the chat.
Yes, let me do that.
Then the second question that came up here, well, and I'll also say one question we get with that also is who can actually administer WARNS? Again, we say follow best practice in your district on who usually gives assessments to kids and to the youth. What we want to see is that it is someone who has time to administer this and then have that conversation with the child in case there are any reactions as they're going through that assessment. So you have some rapport with that student to help that situation. The other question that we had was, and Joyce, again, this is a great question, has the WARNS assessment changed or will there be quite the same questions that are in the past? If I point you to this website that's on the screen now and Bruce's comment about some funding that we have, up there you'll see the Institute of Education Sciences. We have some funding for a few years to really help improve WARNS. And so some of that work is actually looking at the content that it currently assesses, both in terms of individual items and the overall domains. And so we've started a process of looking at that content, having it reviewed by experts, and finding where in those domains we assess, we think there are some missing content. And some of those are more protective or strength-based items that we're developing. So what you'll see as an administrator and what the students will see over the next year is us testing out some of these new items to see how they function and if they really fit with WARNS to give more information. Initially, those won't go into the scoring. You will see the responses if you ask for those. You'll see the new items, you'll see how the student responds to it, but it won't go into the overall score as we pilot them. Once we're finished with the pilot of the items, both at the middle school and high school level, then we will begin to integrate that into the scoring system. And so you will see some changes there. That's probably about a year away, honestly, until we actually have the research to support the quality of those items that are more strength-based. But those will be coming out as WARNS changes over time with this grant work. So hopefully that answered your question there.
Thank you, Brian. And you should be able to unmute yourself if you want to and ask a question. So I'm going to stop the share here to go back to our screen mode.
Bruce, I do see another question too. There's at the bottom, it's asking about, will the video be sent out for other information? So yeah, this is being recorded. So everything we covered here, if you want to go back and watch that at a slower pace and go through and see the information, it will be available on our website. And we can make sure people are aware of that. And I think Bruce mentioned in the next, hopefully 8 weeks, we'll be developing new training videos as well, walking you through how each of those components work. You'll hear Tal's lovely voice doing those again, as she did before, and those will be coming out. I don't know exact dates, but sometime through November, those will be available as well. What I will add too, you see WARNS is new in terms of how the system is working. And we have a wonderful web developer working with us, making changes as they come in and adjusting and kind of tweaking things. Is as if you're using WARNS in this next month or so, if you find yourself saying, gee, I really wish we had this, or can't do this, or I find something here, please send us an email and let us know. If it's something that we can work into the system that makes your job easier in using WARNS, we're happy to consider that and see how hard that is to integrate to the system. So we welcome feedback on the system.
And just to add to that, we have had a request to try to develop a way to interface the WARNS with a system called Quest, right? So I believe some districts in Washington State make use of Quest. And the request was to be able to interface WARNS with this Quest system in a way that allowed scores, the final scores for WARNS, to be imported automatically into this Quest system. So we're considering that change, and that's just kind of an example of feedback that we've received from users that we're considering doing. Are there any other questions? Go ahead and try to unmute yourself and ask directly if you'd like to. Well, if not, I would just say to please keep an eye out over the next week or two for an activation email from our system. We have taken all of the existing users from the old system and uploaded them into this new system. So if you were on the old system, you'll be on the new system, but you will still have to receive and activate your new account. And one thing to be clear about is whatever password you set up on this system is going to be completely independent from the old system. So if you change your password on one, it won't change on the other system. Are there any questions about that? Okay, well, I think I'll close it down unless anybody else has anything to add. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your participation and look forward to seeing you on the new system.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.